Oremi, Mutide. Estoy aquí, amigo. I'm back, friends. Welcome all to the Immigrant Whisperer podcast. My name is Dr. Janet Awokoya. I am your hostess for this time. In the last episode, friends, we read about Kunle. Kunle shared a powerful reflection on the challenges he faced fitting in as an African immigrant youth in the United States. He said, "We're just different. I don't know how to explain it. People can tell in some cases we just didn't fit in." In this episode, we delve further into the complex experiences of African immigrant youth as they navigate their racial and cultural identities in the United States. We'll uncover the challenges they face in fitting in with their Black American peers, including the pressure to conform to specific language patterns and social behaviors. Join us as we explore the impact of these experiences on their self-esteem and their sense of belonging. Before we get started, let me ask you to show your commitment to education for the next generation with a powerful statement. Our Black girls and boys read t-shirts are a vibrant symbol of support for Black education and a source of inspiration for young readers. Here I am rocking the t-shirt with an Ankara print skirt. Order your t-shirt today at someblackgirls.bigcartel.com. Also, do you want to learn more about the unique challenges and triumphs of African immigrant youth? We've got you covered, oh. Dive into the insightful book, Some Black Girls Don't Sit Together in the Cafeteria. This captivating story chronicles Oluwaseyi's journey as she navigates complex issues of identity, academics, and belonging in a new environment. Educators, parents, and anyone seeking to support these young individuals will find this book an invaluable resource. Purchase your copy on Amazon today. Now, on to episode 5, chapter 5, part 2, Learning Blackness in a Racializing Society. YouTube title, Black but Not Black Enough. I will begin reading from page 106 of my dissertation. Moreover, their peers used this difference as evidence that they were not Black enough. Kunle and other participants offered a variety of reasons as to why they felt different within their peer groups. However, consistent were themes related to their use of standard English, cultural differences, and social class. Standard English discourse. One of the major behaviors that academics cite as a characteristic of acting white is the use of standard English. Carter, 1999, Fordham and Ogbu, 1986. For many participants, speaking standard American English was the primary cause of their being accused of not being Black enough or acting white. Several participants spoke about being questioned, teased, excluded, and risking exclusion because they spoke standard English. Some accusatory remarks that participants said had been directed at them by their peers included, "You talk white. You sound so white. Oh, you talk proper. And why do you sound white?" For instance, in Abimbola's predominantly white school, speaking standard English was promoted and expected
by her white teachers and peers. However, in predominantly Black contexts, her Black card was revoked as she was accused of acting white when she spoke standard English. She said, I remember going there, predominantly Black school, and I got made fun of my whole fifth grade year because people said I sounded white. People said I acted white. I wasn't Black. To fit in at her new predominantly Black school, Abimbola attempted to represent an identity that she perceived to be consistent with the behaviors accepted by her Black peers, specifically addressing her speech behaviors. I would have to try to change how I sounded so they would not talk about how I talked, she said. The constant accusation of acting white led Emeka to practice a form of self-silencing. She shared that while in social settings with her Black peers, she rarely spoke because she was afraid that she would be criticized and excluded for talking white by her Black peers. She explained this in the following excerpt from an interview. Emeka, I really felt like I couldn't speak. So I didn't speak. I remember that whole year, I didn't speak. I remember all I did was nod. Uh-huh. Okay. I never spoke sentences with them. I never had conversation back and forth. Interviewer, why do you think you didn't talk? Emeka, I just didn't. I just wanted. I didn't want them to be like, oh, she's a white girl. Interviewer, why would they say you were a white girl? Emeka, because I didn't speak slang enough. I didn't speak. I just never had that tone or voice or that way of talking. I was always more proper. I didn't really say ain't because that's not what I learned at home. I don't say ain't. I didn't say got no or double negatives. I didn't speak like that. For Emeka, her sense of identity and sense of belonging was defined by her involvement with and acceptance by her Black American peer group. And she learned that if she spoke, she would be seen as different and risked being excluded by the group. Thus, she felt that self-silencing was the only way to maintain her relationship with her peers. Culture, class, and Blackness. For many participants, part of feeling not Black enough was due to the cultural differences between themselves and their peers. Emeka summed it up this way: I just didn't fit in. Just because of my culture, I didn't fit in. The feelings of difference came from how they were raised, the cultural practices and foods in their homes, their parents' strictness and behaviors in public settings, and the academic and behavioral expectations that were imposed on them. Discussing difference, several participants talked about how the cultural behaviors that they observed within their peer groups in school ran counter to how they were taught to behave at home in terms of addressing adults, dress, speech, behavior, academic orientation, among other things. Kunle explained, the African kids get it the worst. Because you got to understand, the kids spend time at home. At home, the parents are telling them, oh, African kids are respectful to their parents and teachers. African kids eat jollof rice and can eat it at school. African kids wear wrappers and sandals to school. They can speak Gokana, a Nigerian language. They're different. Da 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 da. So the kid is going to feel like he has to go to the school and put that out there. And he's only doing what his parents taught him to do. You know what I mean? According to Kunle and several other participants, putting it out there or displaying cultural behaviors became a problem with their peers who were able to trace aspects of foreignness: accent, dress, names, clothes, mannerisms, taste, speech, which they often use to frame them as not being Black enough. Feelings of difference also occurred during interactions where shared cultural experiences and ways of being were highlighted in the peer group. Emeka, for instance, shared that she often felt like she could not identify with her peers' experiences, saying, like, my group of friends that I hung out with as African Americans, they identify with each other. But when it came to me, I was fundamentally different. She went on to explain that she could not relate to her African American peers, particularly when they behaved in ways she saw as being stereotypic, such as being loud and argumentative. She said, it was like in the group, I mean, Black girls were so Black. You know, they were like really Black. So I was just like, I'm not. I can't compete. Likewise, Ngozi mentioned that her unfamiliarity with Black cultural references often made her feel like a cultural outsider during interactions with her peers. She said, I've had moments where there have been very, very kind of highly Black American contextual situations where when I was growing up, I didn't understand it. So I would either pretend or I didn't say anything until I understand it. The Black American contextual situations that Ngozi referenced refers to the shared domestic and social experiences often discussed by her Black American peers, which she often did not experience and did not understand. She went on to elaborate on her unfamiliarity with distinct cultural aspects among Blacks who have ties to the southern parts of the United States. Like, you know, I don't know things with grits or collard greens or hair in the kitchen. Ngozi's unfamiliarity with particular cultural aspects of her Black peers, such as eating food traditionally eaten by Black Americans in the South, or using hot pressing combs to straighten their hair, generally in the kitchen, often made her feel excluded from conversations and experiences that bonded her Black American peers together. Although many participants described a cultural gulf that marked them as different and not Black enough among their peers, class also impacted their racial identity and sense of belonging. For participants, race and class were often conflated, and issues that they perceived as class based were also about Blackness. These class dimensions came up for the participants around clothing, cars, homes, parental occupations. Remilekun explained, I didn't wear the same things that other kids wore. I wasn't in style, in fashion. I didn't have the sneakers. I didn't have the sweater tops that they had and things like that. For many of the Nigerian respondents, their parents were unable to afford the brand name clothes or shoes that their peers wore. Over time, this causes participants to become very aware of class differences and to feel different from their American peers. Participants responded to the visible class differences by regularly pleading with their parents for material goods. Although parents did sometimes succumb to their pleas and purchase popular clothes and shoes, participants explained that most of the time they were denied these items because of their parents' limited income. Abimbola recounted her mother's common response to her clothing request, saying, every other time it was like, you're not serious. Money does not grow on trees. In addition to identifying income constraints, several participants discussed how their parents challenged their requests for popular clothing with a variety of responses, like emphasizing how they were different from American children or comparing their own lives in Nigeria to their children's lives in the US. As Kunle recounted, my dad thinks if you're not walking on your feet barefoot, you're fine. Because when I was young, I wore slippers. In the experience of Kunle's father and many other African parents discussed in the study, school children wore uniforms, which to various degrees masked economic differences between students. Therefore, they did not have a frame of reference for the social importance of clothing in peer groups in the United States. Whereas Black American parents, even those in poverty, perhaps those in poverty even more so, more likely understood the social significance of wearing the right clothing and were willing to purchase popular clothes for their children to avoid teasing by their peers. According to all participants, a common response from parents when denying them clothing items was to emphasize that material gains come with academic success. This often led many of the participants frustrated because they felt that They worked hard academically as their parents requested, but saw no immediate material reward. On the contrary, they saw their peers, who they saw as not striving for academic success, in possession of these items that they longed for. For example, Adeshina recalled, there are plenty of times in middle school and high school where I would get frustrated and mad because even though my parents were like, hard work, there would be plenty of times where I didn't have the nicest clothes. My hair wasn't done the way I wanted it. I didn't have the right shoes. And I'm like, you say work, but I'm working hard and you can't even get me some jeans that I want. And so I see other people looking the way I want to look. And I'm like, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but they're looking great. They're getting all of the attention. I want to be like that. Likewise, Kunle recounted, I would go to school and I would see a kid that came fresh home, fresh back to school off of suspension. And this kid would have the new sneakers, all the nice clothes, all the jewelry, and everything like that. I was getting good grades, and I didn't understand why I was wearing my brother and sister's clothes. That pissed me off. Then my dad would tell me, do you want a gift? This is what you're supposed to do. But I'm like, still, can I get some kudos? That didn't help because that really made me mad. In my head, I would think, you have money to send home, but you don't have money to buy me a new pair of sneakers when I need it because I had these sneakers for 2 years. According to Adeshina and Kunle, their parents' emphasis on hard work without providing them with the material goods they felt they deserved frustrated them and contributed to their feeling different within their peer group. A point worth mentioning is that while many American parents may have understood the value placed on clothing among youth and in response purchased items for their children, the participants felt that their African parents did not. The most salient reasons mentioned were financial constraints, parents' lack of understanding about the social significance of clothing, and spending priorities, which often included sending money to Nigeria, as Kunle discussed. For many of the participants, their parents' reluctance to buy name brand clothes not only distanced them from their peers, but it also served as yet another aspect that made them not Black enough among their American peers and was a source of divisiveness and ridicule that made many participants feel inadequate and different. Although several participants were unable to learn and perform Blackness as dictated by their peers, some participants managed to do this, and as a result, they gained acceptance among their Black peers during the middle and high school years. 5 of the 11 participants, Abimbola, Adeshina, Femi, Ngozi, Uzama,
were able to fit in attributed their success to a variety of factors, including their ability to identify with the social and cultural experiences of their Black peers, e.g., racial discrimination, music, food, and finding a genuine peer group that was understanding of and accepting of their cultural background and, when necessary, protected them. As Adeshina explained, so the children that I grew up or peers I grew up with started from elementary school. If there were other people that would tease me, they would protect me. And so I gained a sense of like security within my that was my security blanket basically. They were non-African kids. They would protect the African kid. So that's what I gained. I gained a sense of like loyalty with them. Several participants also mentioned that their ability to code switch or imitate the language patterns and social behaviors of their peers in particular social contexts helped them to gain acceptance. For instance, Ngozi said, when you're in a certain environment, you speak a certain way. I could manipulate. I didn't go home and talk like that, but I could roll my neck with the best of them and do that. Ngozi's comment is significant for two primary reasons. First, it highlights the fact that she had to learn to change her language and her communication styles in various contexts to in order to fit in with her peer group. She learned to roll her neck, which is a common gestural movement generally used by Black girls to emphasize a point or demonstrate defiance. According to Ngozi, learning these Black speech patterns and behaviors helped to be viewed as authentically Black by her Black American peers. Second, Ngozi realized that displaying these speech patterns and behaviors at home was not acceptable or desirable. Likewise, in the following interview excerpt, Abimbola highlighted how adopting her peers' language patterns helped her to adapt to her Black peer group. Abimbola, once I got to middle school, I think I probably settled more into my Blackness. Interviewer, what does that mean? Abimbola, Black as in African Americanness. I don't think I sounded as white any longer. For Abimbola, settling more into her Blackness required learning how not to sound white and instead learning the communication patterns of her peers in order to feel more accepted. Summary. It is important to note that for the majority of the participants, learning Blackness was not a simple process, nor was it necessarily desired by all the participants. The process of learning Blackness was different for each individual participant, depending on their personality, their situation, their way of wanting to deal with the pressure of the peer group and the information that they receive from their parents. Parents and peers had perspectives of what it meant to be Black. African born parents combined race, ethnicity, and nationality into one concept, which was to be dealt with simultaneously. Nonetheless, over time, some immigrant parents eventually came to understand these concepts as separate, socially constructed entities. In contrast, Black American peers defined Blackness based solely on skin color. Membership is involuntary and cannot be negotiated. Hence, communication patterns using standard English is considered a betrayal to the group racial identity. Nonetheless, this perspective of involuntary group membership confounds issues of culture, class, and Blackness. As we wrap up this episode, it's clear that the experiences of African immigrant youth are multifaceted and often misunderstood. The pressure to conform to a specific image of Blackness can be both isolating and damaging. We hope that by sharing these stories, we can foster greater empathy and understanding. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back with another episode soon. Until then, keep the conversations going and get up and go for a walk. Peace.